Hey everybody, it's Greg with 2 Minute Timeout, and I'm here with my good buddy, what's his name?
Miles.
Miles. Miles is here, and we hope you're having a good week. And this week's 2 Minute Timeout is on the widow of Nain. And in the book of Luke, 7th chapter, is just kind of tucked away a little, kind of a short story about how Jesus, this woman comes out who is a whose husband has died, and now recently her son has died. She's a widow, and her son has just died. And there's a big crowd in town, and her son comes out in the casket, and there's and the bearer and the pallbearers, and Jesus saw her, and it says that he had compassion on her and said to her, "Do not weep." And then he came up and touched the bearer and the pallbearers. They stood still, and then he said to her son who was dead, he said, "Young man, I say to you, arise." And the dead man, it says, sat up and began to speak. And Jesus gave him to his mother. And that's just that little verse that's kind of tucked away. It's not talked about much. Really shows a lot about the heart of Christ, doesn't it, Miles?
Yes, I agree.
How so? How do you think? What do you think that shows, or what do you think that showed to the widow and to the people around? It says there was a considerable crowd. And what do you think that showed to her, or the lessons she might have learned, or perhaps the people who were observing all of this while it was going on?
Yeah, so what I see in the story is Jesus, he shows compassion to everybody, and it doesn't matter what your background was or where you came from. Jesus has compassion on us, and as it says in the Bible, Jesus, he is acquainted with our grief, and so he knows what it is. He knows what it's like to go through suffering. And what I see in this story is that Jesus raising up the widow's dead husband, was it?
Son.
Dead son.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
That's okay.
We see in the story how Jesus knows what it's like to experience grief. And when we see this story, we can see the point of it is that Jesus is Lord of the living and the dead, and that Jesus, ultimately, the bigger picture I see here is that Jesus had compassion on everybody. That's why he came to earth, to teach people about him and to know about his character, because it also says in the Bible too that the heart of Jesus is that he's gentle and lowly in heart, and that his yoke is easy and his burden is light. And so what I see in the story is that Jesus had compassion on the widow of Nain, and he wanted to help her and wanted to raise up her son for her. And what we can assume that with the crowd being nearby is that the crowd, they were amazed at what Jesus did, and that they wanted to know who he was and what his character is all about. And what I see, the significance of all of this, is that Jesus stands out from the rest of the world, because as we read about the life and ministry of Jesus, he did the exact opposite of what the world did. He was gentle and lowly in heart. He was kind and patient with everybody, and he always said the right thing, and he knew how to help those people. He knew exactly what their needs were, and he wanted to show compassion on them. And that's what I see about the whole story of the widow of Nain, is that her only son had passed away. And what I see here, what we see first in the story is Jesus raising up the widow's dead son, bringing him back to life. But ultimately, I see with this bigger picture is that Jesus can bring anybody from spiritual death to life, as long as we accept him for who he is and what he did for us, and as long as we admit that we're sinners, that's when our eyes can be really truly opened, not just physically but spiritually as well. So that's what I see in this.
That's awesome,
story.
Miles. That is awesome. And I like how you said that how everybody around him that were there, the witnesses that were there, really saw that Jesus had compassion and he cared, and right at the end of that passage, so that's Luke 7:11 through 17, and verse 17 it says, "And this report about him spread through the whole of Judea and all of the surrounding country." So that little story, that little moment, and that big gesture about Jesus, like you said, relating and overcoming death and having compassion. And just imagine if we had similar compassion and we could relate to people and show that we cared, and how much, and we did that in Jesus' name, what that can, and what kind of witness that could be, and how that could spread too. So great lesson, Miles, on the widow of Nain and that miracle that Christ did. Thanks, everybody. Have